Well, thank you, Intermitten. It's always a joy to be back in Ann Arbor. It's also always a joy to be here in the Ark. Never been here from this vantage point before. But that said, I have to admit that this particular setting, and so many of you all in one room together at 10 a.m. is triggering some pretty visceral fight or flight instincts, mostly flight. And that's because, I was thinking about it. I hate meetings. And I realized when I was thinking that I haven't been in a room, in a meeting with like 3 or more people in about 5 years. And yet I'm here. I am here today, despite my dread of meetings, to emphasize to you that creative, successful collaboration is possible. So this is my talk today. More baboon, less unicorn. Successful collaboration is not a fantasy. And it's possible to collaborate successfully whether you work in a large organization or as a freelancer. And I know because I've done both. For 9 years, I worked in the design department of National Geographic magazine, designing photo layouts like this one, and designing maps, such as this one, showing the most popular surnames in the United States, sized by popularity and colored by ethnicity. Designing infographics, like this one. Let's see, there we go. Infographics like this one, where we're showing the concentrations of pharmaceuticals that have been found in fish tissue in our watersheds. But then I went out on my own, and I went out on my own so I could take on some bigger projects and to collaborate with small businesses like Literati Bookstore. I designed the sign and the mural on 4th Avenue. Thank you. Thanks to all the people who have typed those amazing notes on the typewriter. That's the content of that mural. I also collaborated with Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore to design 11 new interpretive panels that will be installed on Pierce Stocking Scenic Drive this summer. And then I've been able to collaborate with nonprofits like the 826 Michigan Creative Writing Tutoring Center. Most recently, helped them design a series of posters for their new robot factory in Detroit to warn against the dangers of unchecked power. But for the past 5 years as a freelancer, I'll just let that sink in for a moment. Most of my work is not designing tongue-in-cheek posters, but writing and designing books, as Heidi mentioned. And most recently, I collaborated with a geographer in London named James Cheshire to design and write a new book that's coming out this September called Where the Animals Go. And in 50 Maps and Graphics, we show how scientists all around the world are now using the technology in our phones, from GPS to accelerometers, to study the movements of animals on land, sea, and sky. And that includes everything from elephants who are using tunnels to cross under an elevated railway that's now bisecting Tsavo National Park in Kenya, to the inner workings of a vulture's spiral, to the movement of an entire colony of ants. But as much as I'd love to go into detail with many of these stories, of all the animals we featured, the one that I want to discuss with you today are the baboons. In 2012, anthropologist Margaret Crowfoot, she and her team, they attached GPS collars to 26 baboons out of a troop of 46 in central Kenya. And these GPS collars were programmed to record one location a second. And the study lasted 4 weeks. So you can do the math. One location a second times 26 baboons times 4 weeks yielded over 20 million data points. And what this detail shows is you can see the movements of an entire troop of baboons where they go over the course of one day. That's this purple loop that they're making here. And we can also see where they slept in these trees alongside the river. And then we can see the wide berth that they gave to villagers from this village down here, and this is all the pastoral land where they herd their livestock. But what the researchers really wanted to see with all this detail was they wanted to see how baboons collectively as a troop decide on where to go each day. They were interested in how baboons collaborate. From those millions of data points, they were able to identify 57,000 individual baboon decisions, such as when one baboon influences other baboons to follow or stay put. And what they found is that when baboons disagree on where to go, they don't split up. With predators like leopards around, it's safer to stick together. Instead, when the angle of disagreement is small, they compromise and split the difference. But when the angle of disagreement is large, majority rules. They found another interesting thing. When they looked at it, they realized that it wasn't the dominant male or female of the troop who was calling the shots. Instead, as in this example we show in the book, and both of these graphics will be in a larger size that you can explore tonight at Pop-In, it was actually a female and her juvenile who led the way across the field. So as Crowfoot says, with baboons, all group members have a choice. And it struck me that maybe we could learn a thing or two about baboons. However, I've noticed businesses, especially in tech, tend to be preoccupied with a more imaginary animal. I'm not talking about this. When I say unicorn, I'm also not talking about this. Instead, by unicorn, I mean this. This is a recent job posting on Glassdoor for a senior visual journalist at NBC News in New York. This is a job at the forefront of journalism's digital future. The ideal candidate is creative, innovative, and agile. And as you'll see in a second, the mutant hybrid of at least 8 separate human beings. Job duties. Let's count them. You will create compelling digital experience, including 360 videos, VR and AR, data visualizations, dynamic interactive features. The candidate will also have 7+ years UI UX experience, expertise working as a front-end developer, and will be able to write clean and efficient code. Okay, let's accept that may be possible. So maybe 4 or 5 people rolled into one. This candidate will also have expertise in digital design theories, including but not limited to typography, responsive web design, and color theory. Now, I know, having worked in this field, that there are very few designers who can write clean and efficient code, and there are very few coders who know a thing about typography and color theory. But they may be out there. Maybe it's this new emerging, species here. So I'm up to like 6 or 7 right now. But they also expect this candidate to have a strong research and reporting background, audio and video skills are a plus. And should that person walk in the door for an interview, they should know that they're expected to have willingness to work on weekends. Now this is a trap. This is not good. This job has endless meetings, directionless leadership, and guaranteed burnout written all over it. Trust me, I know. Yes? This was like a week ago. Yeah. So I think it's still open if you want to apply.
Sorry, I don't work on the weekends.
Yeah.
I don't qualify.
All right. But I know this has burnout written all over it because I've been there. I'll tell you a story. I started out as a wide-eyed young kid. This is back in 1983, kid who loved crayons. And by the time I got to high school, by the time I got to high school, I realized that I was going to art school. And it was here at the University of Michigan School of Art and Design that I discovered my love for graphic design. I studied abroad in New Zealand shortly after 9/11. And when I got back, I started designing a book to process my international experience. And it was this work that led me to want to work for National Geographic. That was the dream. That was the dream job. See, I wanted to be able to use my art and design skills to talk about international issues with a global audience. And for 9 years, I did. But then, along the way, the magazine business started to change. And I found that I wasn't just designing the best magazine pages that I could conceive. I was being expected to take those same ideas and also design them for the web, for the iPad, the iPhone, for the Kindle, for the Nook, for the fucking Nook. That was not the dream. But I did. Until one day, May 3rd, 2012, I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I just felt dead inside. I had burned out. I felt so far away from this and from this, and I could scarcely remember what it felt like to wake up and create something and feel like this. So what do you do? What do you do when your dream job becomes a nightmare? Well, I took time out to clear my head. A friend, a great friend, invited me to come learn to surf at a timeshare he had just rented in Costa Rica. So yeah, I took him up on that. It was exactly what I needed. And just as that time in New Zealand helped me envision my future at National Geographic, it was in Costa Rica where I realized, I ought to be able to know a year from now or 5 years from now why I left my dream job. And I was very good at surfing, but just sitting on the board, looking out over the water, it hit me that the reason that you left is to not have someone else dictate your creative agenda. The reason that I left was to not have someone else dictate my creative agenda. And so began my life as a freelancer. That was 5 years ago this month. Has it been easy? Hardly. But the independence to set my own creative agenda has allowed me to do these deep dives and take on projects like writing books and designing those graphics for Sleeping Bear Dunes. Now, as many of you in the audience may know, the life of a freelancer can be incredibly isolating, and it's also stressful and limiting when you feel like you have to do everything yourself, including being your own IT department. That's where collaboration comes in. See, if you can identify a few key collaborators, then you can still set the creative agenda, but you can also bring some of that social nature of the office back into your day. Plus, collaboration allows us to take on bigger projects than we could ever possibly handle alone. But how, right? How, if you're someone like me who fled the office conference room to the seclusion of a home studio, how do you begin to ease yourself back into collaborating? And how do you guarantee that said collaboration will be successful? In other words, how can we learn to be less unicorn and more baboon? Well, for starters, I think it helps to acknowledge the conditions that can turn collaboration into that insufferable groupthink. So I'm curious, who here has just had a terrible work experience with collaboration? All right. I want a few examples here. This slide has jumped ahead, so it's given away some things, but what are some of the horrible ways in which collaboration has just gone wrong for you? Anyone? Yeah?
When everybody's not on the same page, they all have a different vision in their heads, and there isn't a shared understanding.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
The scope gets out of control real quick.
The scope. Ooh, the scope.
When people aren't in a transparent headspace, so they may be bringing one set of perspectives to the meeting, but then privately having different feelings about the project, which causes dissonance or just all sorts of chaos.
Absolutely.
Hidden
Hidden
agendas.
agendas. Powers, we could spend all day just listing these things. We could cover all the walls of this room writing these things, but I feel I've been able, thinking about this for today, that you could boil many of these problems down into these three categories: no trust, no time, no direction. Now, in no trust, we're talking about the who of collaboration, who we collaborate with. This could be not trusting the talent of the members of our team or having micromanagers that don't trust our talents. Time, we're talking about endless meetings, distractions, unrealistic deadlines. Direction, we're talking about a lack of consensus on the team or having some leadership that's always changing the end goal. So let's break these down individually and think about how they can help us be more Baboon. Note, with trust, I find you want to collaborate with the best talent, not your best friends. So many times people start businesses and they want to work together with their friends, and it can get ugly fast. When I started working with James, our first collaboration was for that map I showed you at the beginning of the surnames. That was his research, and after working on that map, we've been making maps together ever since. I realized that there's no one else I know who can process data and code the way he can. So when we do our books, we also make sure to acknowledge our weaknesses and play to our strengths. There's a clear division of roles between us. He does as a geographer and an academic and a programmer. He does all of the data processing, the coding, the geographic analysis. He does most of the academic connections because he works at a university. And he covers, when we have to do interviews with scientists, he's working in Europe. So he makes all those connections. I cover the North American territory, and with a background as an artist and designer, I design the book, I handle the typography, I do the illustrations. And I also, as a background as a journalist, do most of the writing and editing. We trust each other, and we trust that process. As far as time, there comes a process in every project I work on where I more or less freak out. And I just have to remember to breathe. So I set, this basic self-management here, but I set a reminder on my computer to every morning tell me that it is okay and right to take the time we need to make the quality work that we were born to make. It's okay and right to take the time we need to make the quality work we were born to make. You also got to obliterate obstacles. For me, that includes open offices. I just can't do it. I know many of you must like using Slack. That's a kryptonite for me. I can't. My home studio in Los Angeles, there's a door I can lock. My dog, nobody can interrupt me in there. I keep it just totally quiet and no music usually. And that's just what I found I need to get my work done. But so often in businesses, when they talk about collaboration, there's a preoccupation with the group part of it, the meetings, the sharing, the discussing. That leaves very little time for the individual effort and reflection, the actual work. So defend your alone time. Then you can regroup to share your findings, and then also maybe ask for help if you run into a snag. As far as direction, outline your vision. On every book that James and I do together, we create what I call a book map. So this here is every page and where the animals go when we first started. It's just a bunch of empty rectangles where we can start blocking in our ideas, putting our content in order, figuring out where it's going to go. But the key is to never be afraid to note when something's not working. So along the way, you can see here that the book map really evolved and changed, and we cut it from 196 pages down to 174. And we cut tons of graphics, we changed sections around, we regrouped things, but the key was that we made all of these cuts together. Now, I know I said at the start that I hate meetings. But the beauty of conferences like Intermitten here is that over the next few days, you have the opportunity to potentially meet a collaborator, a James of your own. That's step one. That's the who of collaboration. Steps 2 and 3 can come later, but for the next 48 hours, all I ask is this: meet somebody. But not just somebody, meet somebody whose talent complements your own. Meet somebody who will challenge you and who you can challenge in return. Meet somebody with whom you want to stay in touch. Because chances are you might not work together this week or this month or even this year, but there will come a time when you have an idea that's bigger than you could possibly handle alone. And when that time comes, don't try to be a unicorn. Instead, think back to that great conversation you had here at Intermitten and go make something great together. Thank you.